Welcome to a PGS 7 macro review. We're going to be going over the macro in the games from Group A and Group B. If you have never watched a macro style video, it's mostly analyzing the decisions teams made from a 2D perspective so you can try and understand why they made those decisions. Alright, moving on to Game 1, we have a very easy east to west plane. Most teams can make their loot spots. Something to note in this first phase is we do have Navi and 17 contesting, and in this game, pretty sure 17 win with 3 up, as we can see. Very clean defense from 17. And now we're going to go look at the positioning of teams in Circle 1 and discuss who has some good positions. Phase 1 is almost closed now, and all the teams have pretty much consolidated onto their splits they want for this first zone. Key thing to remember, guys, Phase 1 doesn't matter that much. You do want to get as much info as you can in Circle 1, but hard shifts do exist, and sometimes you're always going to be outside of zone no matter what you do. So it's interesting to look at some of the team's space. We have T5 with a lot of space on the north, Day Trade with quite a lot of space on the southwest. New Happy have a pretty passive split in the center, and we have 4am with a good split on the east, as well as TE controlling most of the center space. So in terms of this circle, nothing interesting is going to happen yet, but by circle 2 we should have a better idea on the lines that will be used for the rest of the game, and also where it is likely to end. The only interesting thing that happened in circle 2 was BB landing on Day Trade's 2-2 split. They used an E-pickup from the east, and they successfully wipe a Day Trade, which causes Day Trade to come out in 15th. Interesting to note that T5 does backfill this God compound, and we're going to look at some of the positions in C2 and discuss what our fighting line is going to look like. With Circle 2 almost popping to Circle 3, we can look at the positioning for the teams. We can see most of the central teams are staying quite tight and sitting inside their compounds, and a lot of the edge teams are controlling a good amount of space. You can see how much space Furia has, you can see how much space Gen G has, as well as TKL, and course Twisted controlling a lot of northern space, and they have plenty of lines if it shifts east as well. So it is important to note that C2 isn't the be all and end all, but being center in C2 typically has an advantage compared to being edged. But by C3 we should know what our game is going to look like and where we're going to start fighting and losing teams, as no one else dies in this phase, but I'm sure we'll have some deaths quite soon. As zone pops, we can see that not many teams actually need to make that many decisions. Maybe Twisted need to do something, Begopar potentially have to do something, but most of these teams have space that they can slot into, and no one really should be taking any fights, and that's exactly what we see. So I did lie, no one else dies this phase. We have one of Twisted going down on a breach, and also we have one of TE going down on the breach. Our next team to be eliminated is Furia. They opt to go for a wrap in hopes that they can fight for something along the side of this hill. It's going to be very difficult for them to survive, unfortunately, as they're going into the crossfire of BGP and Twisted Minds, so that is our next team eliminated. In terms of the south, we have Genji forcing a fight on the compound, and Falcon slow playing, going behind them. Genji, however, does go and set up inside the line we were talking about, which leads Falcons to getting held out of the zone. Our next two teams to be eliminated are, as we discussed, Falcons, Genji setting up a good crossfire to kill Falcons coming out of the compound. It is important to note that TKL is controlling a huge portion of this zone now, and this fighting line is really the only hope for our southwest teams. 4am opting to stay on the high ground, which does make it very difficult for them to get into a position that means anything, as they have nothing inside the playable zone. 17 are also in a tricky position, as their only real position they can play is this broken shack, and this shack is not good at all. You do not want to be there, especially if there's teams up on the side of the hill, and also in this compound, and also in this shack and this road compound. And just for the cherry on top, the Wizard Tower is quite annoying to deal with too. So 17 in a very difficult position, as well as 4am. Zone pops, and we can see that T5 is in definitely the most dominant position. It's interesting to note how they have split up their compound defense, one in the triple, one in the double, mansion double, one in the garage, and one in the pro or sugar, whatever you call them. That is because they understand that if anyone breaches these two buildings, they're going to have plenty of angles from their buildings, so it is all good, and they really need to focus the north and make sure no one from the West comes, they know that TE need to hold out their East, as teams like Twisted, Begopar, and T1 may need to come that way. The two players are just making sure that Begopar do not run in or breach from the north, which is possible, a difficult breach for BGP, but T5 setting up their defense exactly how I think they should, and of course they're a very smart team. It's interesting to note as well that New Happy now has a very good prior on this zone. They can simply third party everyone from the west. They have no pressure on their east. I think 2 people in the single should be enough for any eastern team to be discouraged onto breaching. 17 also need to make a decision, and I do not think breaching is the best decision for them. TE in a split right now and waiting for their east to be clear before they can start really playing into their next ridges. So they have to play defense right now. Bestia also looking to get some control out on the west, leaving one in the shack, trying to maximize their pressure and try and get some kill points on Genji, as there was a knock from the Falcon's fire. TKL is also coming to third party this with a nice crossfire. They are working together with Bestia. TKL does have a very good position as well, as they control a complete monopoly on the western side of this zone and have a very good fighting line into this dip. So in terms of access to center and central positioning, they have very good access in terms of their fighting line, just as New Happy does. T5, of course, has fantastic lines in every direction, so they are in the most dominant spot without a doubt. The next 2 teams to die are 17, they are in the Broken Shack, and T1 opts to seat swap them, and 4am is medding in the blues, so they go out respectively in 11th and 10th. Our BB Solo also is the next player to go out and getting in 9th, just 1 point off placement. Our next 2 teams to go out are Begopar and Twisted Minds. They're both fighting over this Wizard Tower with TE holding a lot of the angles, so this is a very difficult fight, and both these teams, now that they have committed for this fight, are almost definitely dead after zone closes, which is exactly what happens. Pretty unfortunate for Twisted. If they were able to survive maybe 1, maybe 2 more first aids, they would have in fact gotten an extra placement point, as the T1 solo is cleared by T5 once they know they have no north threats. We are now left with our last few teams. T5 doing a very good job and preparing for the east crash. They have 3 players on the exact angle that T5 is most likely to drive from, as well as a player pitted in the road ready for that pull up and greet them with either a DMR, a nade, or AR spray. So T5 is prepared for their next breach. New Happy is setting up for their inevitable fight. As we remember, a lot of these teams on the southwest, they're all fighting for the same position, and that is because that is the only position that is playable considering the compound's dominance of this type of zone. TKL did lose one early, which makes it difficult. If they did have one, they would be able to keep one player pitted over on the northwest, but at the same time, that is very risky. If T5 decides to sweep that, there's nothing they can do. So TKL, Bestia, and New Happy are all fighting for the south, with T5 holding off TE's breach. It does end up being successful, so T5 holds off the TE breach, and New Happy managed to kill Bestia, combined with a pinch from TKL. This leaves us to our last few teams. New Happy and TKL have to fight for the south. T5 are just going to kill Clories and then begin third partying. So that is basically the end of the game. There's not much for teams to do, as this is almost a guaranteed win for T5, especially once TKL and New Happy begin trading. So this is a free game for T5, and it is important to note that this was the compound that Day Trade was sitting in, and it was unlucky that BB decided to form an e-pickup on them, but this could have been a Day Trade win, so it's interesting to see how the game may have changed based on that e-pickup. That is our first game, concluding T5 with a 17-point game. Good start to the tournament. I am going to keep these videos quite short. I'm going to do 1 per day until the conclusion of all the games. There's going to be plenty of PUBG to review, but I hope that these videos can give you a more macro-oriented viewpoint on the game, and hopefully it improves your PUBG competitive viewing experience.